Local attorney office is about less than a mile from my office. We're going to talk today about credit issues. As most of you know, my office represents people in bankruptcy, but many people aren't ready to take that step. And Sarah spends a lot of time and focuses her practice on helping people with less significant credit issues. So, for example, if you're making your payments on time but struggling to make the minimum payments, if you're behind on your payments, Attorney Porras will be able to give you some suggestions on how to deal with that. These are universal issues for all of us all of the time, but things have gotten a little bit more intense, I guess is the word. Now that we've got this pandemic, some people are out of work and struggling even more to pay their bills. The Governor Lamont and the federal government have both instituted some relief, but those are all temporary measures. So when we all get back to work someday, these are all issues that are going to need to be addressed. So Sarah, thank you for joining us today.
And thanks, Suzanne.
And what can you tell us about credit?
Well, and I might need some help getting the slides going here. I want to sort of expand on what you're just saying, Suzanne. I mean, Suzanne and I work hand in hand a lot. For example, you know, when someone comes to me and they have a foreclosure, I'll really talk to them about whether or not bankruptcy is a good tool for them. I figure out if it is, when that would be a good time. Timing is everything, I think, with a bankruptcy. So I may work with someone for a while and then we realize, okay, now is the right time to file bankruptcy. And I send them on to Suzanne and she does that. And depending on the type of bankruptcy, and we'll talk about this more on April 22nd, then she'll sometimes send them back to me to keep working on saving their house. And then sometimes somebody comes to me with, and here we'll talk about the credit conversation. Sometimes someone comes in and they have, they call about one thing, like they call about one account. They say, you know, I owe all this money to American Express and now American Express is suing me. I fell behind 6 months ago. And then when I talk to them, it turns out they have lots of other accounts that have also fallen behind, things like that. Now, what I find that's interesting about the general public, the typical American, is especially, you know, working middle class, upper middle class American, is that we're very tuned into our credit scores. I sort of jokingly coined this phrase many years ago that people consider their credit score their adult grade. Like it sort of lets you know how you're doing as a grown-up, right? You're not in school anymore. You're not getting A's and B's. You don't have exams. No one's grading you. No one's letting you know how you're doing. But if you feel like, oh, I've got a good credit score, I must be doing the right thing as a grown-up. I must be a good adult. I'm successful. I'm following the rules. I'm doing everything right. And I want to make sure that people don't come away with thinking like they are their credit score, or just because their score is on a downturn or is lower, that there's anything wrong with them, that there's something wrong with that, or that they're a bad person. I mean, only somebody who's completely drank the Kool-Aid with credit scores would say, oh, you have a 500 credit score, you must be, and then fill in the blank with something negative. Okay, it's only if somebody completely doesn't really understand how credit scoring works, why a credit score is what it is, would you judge somebody based on a credit score. So I don't want people to I'm assuming that the recording is starting on this. I don't want to say all these brilliant things and have it not be recorded, because a lot of people have asked us if there's recordings. So just going over what I think of credit scores, which I think they should not be treated like your adult grade, and you should not judge yourself if you have a negative credit, a low credit score. One thing that that I can tell when something has gone wrong in someone's life. If I'm reading a credit report and everything started going late in June 2018, I'll say, okay, what happened in June 2018? And it's usually not just one thing, but it's usually two things. Oh, that's when my mom died and we got divorced, or that's when I got injured and I couldn't work anymore. And on top of that, you know, like fill in the blank with something else bad that happened that caused some financial ripple effect. So that's what you know, let me just see, somebody asked a question here. Okay, we are recording. Okay. That's just that's usually what I see. Again, it's usually that something happened in your life. Okay. So I don't know how to get the slides going, but we do have a few images prepared, and I really don't know how to do that. So sorry, guys. Yeah. Is there a way to get the images on the screen? I can share my screen. I have the PowerPoint.
So do you have the slideshow open on your desktop right now?
I do. So is that, if I should
bottom
do that?
of your Zoom, there's a little green button that says share screen.
Okay, I didn't know we were going to do it like that. No problem. Okay, here we go. So I want to go through some, let's see if I can get them to move. Here we go. Here's some just credit report and credit score basics, okay? There's 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And you can go directly to each of their sites and request a credit report. They'll cost you, I think, as residents of Connecticut, it costs something like $5. You don't have to pay for a credit report if you have not received a free one yet each year. So you can go to annualcreditreport.com. That's the website that's been set up by law to provide each American with a credit report for free once a year, each of the 3 credit bureaus. So if you want to get all of them at once because you haven't seen your credit report in many years, great, go ahead and get all 3 at once. You can do it online, or you could go to that website and there's a form you can download, and there's even a phone number. So whatever works for you. I prefer to get them through the mail, because going to the website and it navigates you back to each of the 3 credit bureau websites. 2 out of the 3 put you through a test, and you have to remember things like what's your, random things to test that it's you, so that some ex of yours isn't trying to get your report unfairly or without your permission. So you really have to go through the paces to get your reports online sometimes. And then you have to have a printer with a lot of paper and a lot of ink, because they can print out and be 40, 50 pages sometimes. So I prefer going and getting the 1-page request form, filling it out, send it in by certified mail or some kind of proof of delivery format, because that way they won't throw it away. And they get a lot of them, and they're not well paid, so they'll toss your request unless you can prove it was received. And include a copy of a current utility bill to prove that you're currently living where you are, or a copy of your driver's license if it has your current address on it. That's my tips for successfully obtaining a credit report through the mail. There are other ways to get credit reports. You may have a credit card that offers you a snapshot view of your credit report periodically, or your bank allows you to do that. That's great. There's a website called Credit Karma. I don't think it costs anything to have like a 30-day trial, but be careful if you have to put in debit or credit card. It very likely will subscribe you going forward, so you have to make sure to cancel that once you've gotten the information from there. And it's an Equifax product or a TransUnion product as well, so keep that in mind. And then there's Free Credit Report, which is not free, and that's an Experian product. So that's one way to obtain your credit report. So we're going to go over, we're going to next go to some scores, credit score information, and then we're going to kind of go back to credit reports on how to review and read a report, how to dispute an item on your credit that you don't agree with or that's inaccurate. Then we're going to segue into credit repair and what that's about. And then obviously we'll take questions either as they come in or as they're as relevant. All right. So again, I'm not a huge, I don't focus a lot on credit scores. I'm not a huge fan of credit scores. I think that they are a product that was developed, and like I was saying earlier, that they make us feel like we're being graded. They make us, it's like they're used to judge us. They were actually invented in the early 70s in order to combat unfair lending practices. They figured, well, if everybody is scored based on objective measures, then that will even the playing field between minority borrowers and, say, white borrowers who were getting all the money at the time, all the loans. But it didn't work that way. There are still tons and tons of discrimination in lending, despite the fact that a lot is based on credit scores. So they are what they are. I'm not a huge fan of credit scores, but we're living in a world where we as a culture and a society and an economy, we demand quick, easy access to credit, like at the register, right? You go in, you buy your kids' school clothes in August. Would you like to save 10% off this purchase by opening a credit card with us? And if you say yes, they basically take 2 pieces of information from you, approve you, and you get the discount and you get a credit card in the mail. We are demanding to have fast, easy access to credit, and this is what we get. We get the credit scoring system. You don't have to live and die by credit scores, but it's pretty hard not to these days. A lot of you might know they're used to determine your interest rates on loans, car loans, mortgages, credit card rates sometimes, other loans, personal loans. They're used to determine your insurance premiums on your car insurance and other things. So somehow they see a connection between credit score and whether or not you'll make a claim. So it is good if you're going to be on the radar financially in the United States to know what your credit score is, know where you fall, and to try to maintain it and keep it within the higher range. So this is an image I found off the internet. I've never seen a score as low as 300. I have seen high 400s, and most, a very good score is somewhere above 700. I'm not a mortgage person. Mortgage people know exactly what brackets to be in to get which interest rates and things like that. But generally, if you're above 640 or 660, you're in the running for the best or the prime rates that are being offered. Okay, again, don't take these to heart. And if I've talked to people on the same day who said, "Oh, I'm so excited, my score is finally 640," and I talked to someone else who goes, "Man, my score is 640. I got to do something about that." So it's different for everybody. Some people are really working on raising their score, and some people, and they're excited when they get above 600, and some people are, 600 for them is not normal. So don't worry about it. It's just a reflection of what's going on your credit report right now. It's just a reflection on your ability to have paid bills during a certain period of time in the past. What goes into a credit score is the largest thing is your payment history. And the most important bills within that bracket are things like mortgages and car payments. So if you have a mortgage and you periodically fall more than a month behind or pay more than 30 days or 60 days late, it's really going to affect your score negatively. And that has other ripple effects too about your ability to refinance later or take out new credit on your home at a later date if you have 30-day, 60-day late indications on your credit. So keep up your regular payment history, pay all bills on time, develop a system to pay everything on time or early, and that's a major part of your score. And again, these are not scientific formulas. We aren't told. So another reason I'm not a fan of credit scores is they're the companies that compile them put together these proprietary formulas. So they're not telling us this is exactly what goes into our score, but this is our best guess. So 30% would be amounts owed, and what that means is if you have a credit card that has a $5,000 limit, but you have $4,900 charged up on that card, you're using most of your credit. So that's seen as a risk. You don't have a lot of buffer there. You don't have a lot of leftover credit. So you're maxing out your card. So if you want to improve your score, keep your total amount owed on things like revolving credit, like credit cards, below 50% of the limit. Okay, so if you have a $5,000 limit, keep your balance below $2,500. And even better, you want to go down only up to about 25% maximum if you're looking at a major purchase. So keep it like below $1,250, $1,250 on a $5,000 limit if you're looking to purchase something big. Length of credit history would be how long accounts have been open. I tell the story that I had a credit card that I had since the very early 90s, and then about 10 years later, I asked them to lower the interest rate. They kept raising it. And I said, listen, I'm a good customer. I've had you for 10 years. Please lower my interest rate. And they said, no. I said, well, I'm closing the account. But what I did at that point is I shortened my credit history by 10 years because I hadn't opened any new accounts between that 10-year period, maybe student loans. Other than that, and so you're careful. So keep your oldest accounts open if possible. So, unless it's just not bearable anymore. But the age of your accounts is shows that you're out there and you're tried and true. New credit. I think this is more of a negative. I'm trying to remember what new credit really means in this formula, and then types of credit used. Again, I'm not really up on what these two mean. I grabbed this slide off the internet, and I think they're phrased in a way that I'm not quite familiar. So just keep in mind that paying on time is the number one thing, because
Sarah,
yeah.
I think the new credit is the amount of inquiries, especially in the last 6 months,
right.
Okay. Which they obviously frown upon. And the types of credit used, the way it's been explained to me is they want to see a mortgage, they want to see a car loan, They want to see credit cards. They don't want to just see credit cards and no secured debt.
Got it. Thanks for that.
That's a big part, but yeah.
That's right. New credit really means inquiries. So there's a section on every credit report that gets into who has looked at your credit. And there's 3 categories. There's promotional inquiries, which is not something that hurts your credit. It's Discover Card asking Equifax for all the people age 18 to 24 in a particular zip code, right? They're asking for certain information from your credit file, like your address and your age, and then they want to make an offer of credit to you. And that's why you get a lot of junk mail. So there's a way to get off of those junk mail lists. There's a way to get the credit bureaus to stop giving out your information or selling your information like that when a company like Discover or some credit card asks for it. And that's the opt-out, the consumer opt-out line. So you can look that up on Google, or we can get that to you if you're interested in getting off the junk mail lists. And that's why. And that's when you look at your credit report and you see promotional inquiries. That's all that is. And that's again, usually credit card companies like Capital One or Discover asking the credit bureaus to give them certain information so that they can make you an offer of credit. Then there's an account review inquiry, which is like if you have a Discover card, Discover is looking at what else is on your credit. Back before, trying to think of when the law changed, something like 2007, the creditors could look at your credit and say, whoa, she's been behind 3 months on her car. We're going to lower her credit limit. She had a $5,000 credit limit, and we don't want her to dip into that because she's not even paying her car payment. So let's lower. So they were able to look at your credit and make credit decisions about you based on other things on your credit report. They're not supposed to do that anymore, and that doesn't mean they don't, but that's what those account reviews are. They're looking at how you're paying your other things. And then the third category is inquiries that you initiated. So when you're buying your kids school clothes in August and you go to the register and they say, would you like to save 10% off your purchase by applying for our store card? And you say yes, and they run your credit, they run your profile, you're going to get an inquiry on your credit report, and that's going to lower your score slightly. I don't think it's usually enough to hurt anybody, except if you're in the process of getting a mortgage or a refinance and you're on the edge already of one of those credit score brackets that's going to put you out of range of the best interest rates. You're not going to want to have anybody look at your credit, or you're not going to want to apply for credit anywhere while you're on the eve of a purchase, a major purchase, because it would affect your score. All right, types of credit used, again, like Suzanne said, a diversity. You can't just have two gas credit cards, Sunoco and Mobil, and then be deemed like you have a really great credit profile. Okay, you need to have some diversity in there. All right, when you get those credit reports, this looks to me like from TransUnion. Okay, each of the bureaus has their own format. And it's going to take you a while if you are not used to reading credit reports or haven't seen one, haven't looked at one regularly. It might take you a while to understand what you're looking at. This, say TransUnion, would have these codes. Okay, so under each account, there's going to be a little chart, or there's going to be some indication of your payment history. You can see here if it's an X, or an R, there's no information. Okay, and it's in green, that helps. It means it's good. And then you see that the orange and gets deeper into like a red color the more you're late on an account. If something's a collection account or in collections, voluntary surrender would probably be with a and then it says repossession. I think there's 6 of one, half dozen of another, and what's over here, and then charge off and foreclosure. Okay, so in my opinion, this is the way I explain a charge off. And I say this, I'm just going to insert this here because I don't want anybody thinking that, I don't want creditors using this term charge off to scare you. Okay, let me just look here. Somebody, I think, had a comment and I'm not seeing it now. Hang on. I don't know if somebody can help me out if there was a chat or if someone was trying to communicate with me. I can't find it on my screen. So
I think you're okay. Just keep going.
Sorry, I'm not. Oh shoot, I closed out. Hold on, everybody. I closed out everything and now I got to get it back. All right, hang on. I got to stop screen sharing just because I got to get this back on my screen.
No problem.
Somebody commented Credit Karma is free. Great. If they've stopped needing a credit card, then I'm thrilled because I don't like the idea of having to give over a credit card to obtain your credit report and then you getting stuck in some kind of subscription. So that's good news if Credit Karma really is free now, and they're not sort of running you through those paces.
Just out of curiosity, freecreditreport.com really isn't free of all the commercials you see on TV?
Well, again, in my experience, these are reports. Hold on, I was gonna.
Oh, sorry.
Well, now I'm trying to get back on the screen. Where's my Zoom? And let me see if I can screen share. I don't know if we need to screen share to have this part of the conversation. That's my email. Okay. I think that you have to put in a credit card to obtain, like you have to set up an
Okay.
account. That's all. That's
Okay.
all I'm saying is just be careful of that if that's what you have.
Yep, got it.
So here's my discussion I have with people about charge off. Okay. I've mentioned this again because I think a lot of times if someone does have an account that's in collection, that's behind, I think the debt collector or even the creditor will use this term charge off to scare you. Again, because they have very few tactics they actually can use to get you to pay. So they're going to encourage you to pay by scaring you. And charge off to me is like this. If you're a Discover card, right, and you've got to give annual reports, you're a financial institution, you probably have shareholders, you need to report how much money you're expecting to receive every month in at least minimum payments on all of your accounts, right? So you administer millions of consumer credit card, revolving credit card accounts. Everybody's got a minimum payment of maybe $25. Some have more, and maybe some have less. And so Discover has to tell the world, has to report to the world, hey, look, we're liquid. We're expecting this much money in from payments every month. See? But if you stop paying your account after about 3 months, they know statistically that you're likely not to pay any more money, not on a regular basis. So they can't keep reporting to the world in these reports that they publish that you're going to pay. And I don't mean your one little individual account's going to make a big difference, but the point is, so they periodically they have to take accounts like yours if you're not paying out of the we're going to get money from this person into the we're not going to get money, over to this column of we're not going to get money from these people. And that process of taking you out of the we expect to get paid to the we don't think we're going to get paid column, that's the charge off. That's all it is. That's all it is. They have to do it. There's some federal regulation that requires them to move your account out of the we think we're getting money every month column and putting it over to a we're never going to get money from these people column. And that's all that is. So don't let it scare you. They have to do it either way. And it doesn't, sure, having a charge off on your credit isn't good, but neither is having a 30-day late, a 60-day late, a 90-day or 120-day late, okay? Those aren't good either. But if you're already there, you're already 60 or 90 days late, your credit's not going to get that much worse. So don't pay money on an account because you're afraid of it being charged off that you can't afford, okay? If you can't afford it, you make a decision whether you're going to pay or not pay, and then go forward whether it's going to get charged off or not. Okay, so don't be influenced by that. So I just wanted to explain that when you see that on your credit. Collection accounts do score negatively on your credit, just like late payments, just like repossessions, foreclosures, and charge-offs. Okay, so those are things that are going to hurt. Things will stay on your credit for 7 years if there's any negative information in it. 7 years from when the account is closed. So or from that negative information. So let's say I had some late payments in June of 2015, 5 years ago. This is being recorded in April 2020. Let's say 5 years ago, something happened and I was late for 3 months that summer, lost my job, whatever it was. Okay, so if I were to look at my credit today, if I still had that account open and that information was still reporting, I would see late payments June, July, August 2015, for example. But then if I started paying on time, great, ever since then. But now if the credit report goes back 5 years, those late payments are going to show. So that information can stay on just for 7 years. If I had never had any late payments or problems with an account, that information should stay on for 10 years. Good information should stay for 10 years. Okay. So just so you know, so in 7 years feels like forever, but things don't always stay on for the full 7 years. So don't worry about it. Okay. You got to move on with your life. And the best cure, and we'll get into this later when we talk more about credit repair, the best cure for anything like this will be time. Okay, just keep paying on time and these late payments will go further and further in the past. All right, now the purpose of looking at a credit report is for accuracy. You should check your credit periodically, at least once a year. And the purpose is to determine that everything being reported is accurate. Okay, so if you have a common name and you don't want the other person with your similar name have their information, mixing with yours, you got to check your credit to determine whether their information is mixing with yours. So one way to do that is check your credit for accuracy. And that's why, we were talking about how to read a report. You might get your report and be like, oh my God, my head is spinning. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't understand what I'm reading. That's understandable. Each of them has a different format. Some are oriented like this. Some are oriented like this. Some are many, many pages long. They're divided into sections. So when you get your reports, take a look. If you don't understand what you're seeing, that's okay. Put it down, pick it up the next day, take a look again, see if you understand some more, put it down, pick it up again on day 3, keep reading it until you're going, okay, now I know what I'm seeing. Okay, it can take a few days. Now, if you notice something that's inaccurate, like either circle it or put a little note in the margin. Don't mark it up really heavily, but just note for yourself, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, maybe with pencil. Don't color it in with different color highlighters, okay? Highlighter, when you photocopy it, actually photocopies dark and it covers over. So don't mark up your reports too much. Make a quick list of what's inaccurate and why, and then you have to do a written dispute to fix it, okay? So anybody can report anything about you on your credit. I mean, you have to have an account, you have to have access to credit reporting, but Discover, American Express, your old landlord, a doctor's office, they can report things about you on your credit. It's up to you to make sure it's accurate. Okay, the credit bureaus don't know what's correct about you and what's not correct. So they just compile, they just gather information. They just take whatever people report about you. Those 3 credit bureaus, they compete with each other to have the most information because they want someone to buy their report and not the others, okay? So anybody can report anything about you on a credit report. You have to determine whether it's accurate and make sure it's fixed. So the way to do that would be to draft a letter. So you take a look at your Experian report, for example, you notice a couple of things wrong or missing, and you just have to jot down very clearly your dispute. You don't have to go on for 10 pages. A couple of sentences will do. Put it in writing. Your letter should be dated. Now, when you see blanks here, it's because I was blanking out somebody's real information. Okay, so your letters should have the full date, your full name, your full address, your full account numbers as best you can. Okay, the exception would be Social Security number. I would just put the last 4 digits in the letter. Okay, and you should, a couple sentences about each one. Now, when you send a dispute, I recommend sending it by certified mail or some way that we can prove it was delivered, just like when you made the written request for your credit report. We want to know that Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion received your dispute letter and on what date, because they only have so much time to do their investigation of your disputes, okay? And you're going to put, again, my name is, and put your full name, my social ends in these 4 digits, and I'm writing this letter so I can properly dispute. In this case, it was 2 items that are appearing on my credit where I can dispute information that's not accurate or something like that. Just brief, this is why I'm writing to you. Okay, and then in this case, this person had filed a bankruptcy and these accounts were not showing up on their credit or were not continuing to be reported. So this isn't a typical dispute necessarily unless you've gone through a bankruptcy and you would like your creditors to begin reporting your accounts again. Again, I don't know that they have to, but this was an attempt in this case to get information onto someone's credit. Again, a couple of sentences. For example, let's say your name is John Smith and you have this problem with every John Smith in, Connecticut, their information getting mixed with yours. It happens. So you can say, I'm John Smith. I'm writing to dispute information that's not mine because I have a common name. For example, these are the accounts that are not mine. Please delete them because they're not, you got the wrong John Smith. Just real careful, real quick and clean, okay? You don't have to go on and on and on. Do it for each account that's inaccurate, and then tell them what you want. Tell the credit bureaus in your dispute what you want. I want you to delete it. I want you to correct it. I want you to report it this way. Whatever is appropriate, okay? And then sign it and keep a signed and dated copy of the letter that you send to each bureau. Don't just keep it like saved in your computer that you can print out a new one. No, I want to see the one that you dated so I know when it was sent with your signature. And if you enclose any proof of anything with your letter, like I'm this John Smith, I'm not that John Smith, and you attach some things to your letter, keep it all together. Credit bureaus are supposed to look at this, take a few weeks to investigate, and send you a corrected report or an updated report. Save everything, okay? That should increase your score. If you're getting negative things off your credit, that should help increase your score. If things are too old, if things aren't yours, if you paid 6 months ago and it's still not updated with a zero balance, if you paid 6 days ago, it's not going to show up on your credit yet. It's going to take 2 to 3 months sometimes for any major payments or settlements of accounts to correct on your credit. So give it a couple months. But if it's been a long time and it's still not being reported correctly, if something isn't yours, if it's too old, whatever your reason is, if you dispute it and your report is more accurate coming out of that dispute with fewer negative things, it'll increase your credit score. There are organizations that are credit repair organizations. This is an area heavily regulated by federal law. I'm not a huge fan of credit repair organizations. I believe if your credit report contains information that's accurate, even if it's negative, I don't think there's a lot you can do about it except improve your payment history, improve over time, okay? There are companies that you can pay that'll bombard the credit bureaus with disputes, and sometimes the credit bureaus just give up and they take things off. And if that's what you need to do to get where you're going, go ahead. But because I feel I need to follow the federal law on this, I don't dispute things that are not, I only dispute things in good faith, okay? So accuracy is the best. Keeping on a good financial plan, a good budget will keep your score as high as possible. Suzanne and I are available, as everybody knows. We're doing this again next Wednesday and the following Wednesday, so the 15th and the 22nd. Spread the word. Anybody could do these. These are free. And I think we're going to talk about bankruptcy one week. Whether it applies to you or not, it's interesting, and you may learn something that you don't already know about that process. And again, the point is to educate and to make people understand that things aren't to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be ashamed of with bankruptcy. It's a great tool. We're also going to talk again about mortgages and foreclosure, I think. If you have any suggested topics, let us know. So,
Sarah, before we sign off, can you just talk briefly about what's happening with credit reporting right now with COVID? Are you aware of anything that is changing about the way debts are being reported?
Part of the foreclosure relief that's supposed to be offered by big creditors or big servicers of, say, mortgages like FHA, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they're supposed to, if you're asking for help and not paying your mortgage for a few months, they're not supposed to report you as late. Okay, they're supposed to just maybe not report anything for those months so that it shouldn't hurt you if you need the help and not pay. If you're going to call your mortgage company or any of your creditors and you're asking for help because you've had an income reduction as a result of COVID, I would include asking for what they plan to do on your credit report. And most of these calls are recorded. Okay, the creditors are recording the calls, and I recommend getting a piece of paper, and I've created a call log specifically for this purpose, but any paper will do, the date and time you talk to any of your creditors. So you say, okay, April 8th, 4 p.m., I called Citibank about not paying my credit card for 3 months. I spoke to John, representative number 456. He said, I don't have to pay. I can pay my minimum payment in July, and he told me they're not going to report me negatively to the credit bureaus. You're going to note that, okay, so that if in August or September you get your credit report and lo and behold, they reported you late, April, May, June, and you have in notes specifically who told you and what date and time you were told that they're not going to report you late, we might be able to do something with that. Okay, we might use that either as a dispute to the credit bureaus, or if we had to, we could pursue Citibank for unfair trade practices or some kind of other claim for going against their word, okay? But we can't do it unless you've documented your conversations. So I recommend heavily that you document the conversations with any creditor about this.
Great, thank you so much. I did see one more question on here before we close out. If somebody loses their job and they're struggling to pay both mortgage and credit cards, which do you suggest paying if there's not enough for all of it?
I'd say your mortgage. Pay your mortgage. It's definitely a Sophie's choice kind of decision, but pay the mortgage because it's the biggest bill. It's going to be the least forgiving. The interest implications, even if they tack the payments that you miss, if you have to miss payments, they're first of all, currently mortgage servicers are mostly giving you 3 months off if you ask, but then requiring 4 months to be due all in that 4th month. So until they tighten that up and fix that, I think that that's what we're going to be seeing. So avoid getting into that in the first place, because who can pay 4 months at once? I mean, you're not
Right.
asking because you have the money, you're asking because you don't have the money. And how are you going to come up with 4 full months, 4 months from now? Even if they tack that onto the end, that's interest you're paying on all of that. And we all know that even 4% interest for 10 years or 15 years, whatever you have left on your mortgage, that could actually have a significant impact on the amount of interest you pay over time. So even if you miss a few months now, so pay that mortgage, pay that mortgage, pay that mortgage. I think that this is, again, let your credit cards know you can't pay. Don't just not pay. Let your credit cards know, and include in that conversation, what about my credit report? Please tell me that on top of everything, you're also not going to report me to the credit bureaus. And hopefully they will say, no, we won't report you either. You get 3 or 4 months to get back on your feet. And again, document that, and we'll see if they actually do what they say.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for coming, everyone. And thank you, Sarah, for good information. And we'll see you next week.
Next Wednesday at 3. Thanks a
Thanks.
lot.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.